It suits my angling in so many ways. If I want to set up for a session like I have here, and I'm here for 2 or 3 days, then everything goes on. Hot weather, mozzie panels, front, etc. This comes down because I do get bitten to death. I've got full protection. If the weather gets bad, these simply roll forward. You've got everything you need. Massive internal space, but without it being overly big. I don't know quite how the guys at Tracker have managed that, but it's a little bit of magic. Goes into small swims, but it's still very, very big. Bit of a TARDIS. I love it. I can't see myself using anything else for the near future. If you haven't already got a Tempest, then I strongly recommend it.
Every year our product development team pull it out the bag and bring you something super special that absolutely everybody has to have. Last year it was the Stow Bobbins, the year before it was the Crusher, this year it is the Cutter. That's what this little fella's called. And if I open it up, these are the first prototypes of it, so it's going to look even more beautiful than this, but these are a thing of beauty. So that's how it opens, and I'm sure you'll see what it does straight away. Fill that up with boilies, push down on there, and out come half baits out the other side. Just takes seconds with that nice little scoop on it. The foreign anglers have been asking for something that chops up boilies, because when they're throwing bait out of the boat, they like to throw out half baits as well as whole baits. And if they're fishing in the rivers as well, half baits don't roll along in the rivers, so baiting up in the river is much better with half baits as well. And then if you're using a remote control boat and putting baits out, then a few whole ones and then a few half ones as well, just gets more food items into the swim and releases more of the smell of the boilie out into the lake. And obviously if you're spodding boilies or just spodding a normal mix, then they'll work perfectly in that as well. And if you're going to catapult them out and just fish them at close range, obviously a half bait makes far less splash and flutters down so much easier. And you can see how I'm steaming through this kilo of boilies here. And there's 3 different sizes. This is the 20mm. I'm chopping 18mm with this at the moment, 6 or 7 at a time. And you can go down probably 17 or 16mm in this one. And then obviously up to 20mm, but they have to be round 20s. And then there's a larger size that goes up to 25mm, and then a smaller size as well that's 15mm. So if you want to do 10, 12s and 15s, there's one of those as well. So the cutter's all hidden inside, so there's no way you can cut your fingers. You've got a nice thing on there to press down, and don't worry if you think, oh, these are only soft boilies, it's not going to work on hard ones. We've actually used it on frozen boilies, and he's cut those in half as well. So a fantastic little gadget that everybody's going to want to have. That is the Cutter. An absolutely pristine Oxfordshire mirror, just over £19 this one. Well chuffed to get one as quickly as that after spotting, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to come. So we're going to put him back and show you all that plastic. Well, we wanted to show you all the plastic, but no sooner have I got a few spods back out, I've had a bite on one of the other rods. And this one is on something I'm very proud of. It's an imitation pellet, dumbbell shaped. This one's 12mm, but what we've done is left pellets in the margins for a few hours, and then we've made these dumbbells exactly the same colour, because my main criticism of other plastic pellets is they're the same colour as the pellet before you put it in water, but within minutes it looks washed out, and the one you've put on the end doesn't look anything like the others. These ones do. They're flavoured with a combination of fish flavours that we call fishy fish, because they really are so fishy. Oh. And I think over spotted areas with pellet and stuff on, they're going to be an absolute winner. Yes, another one on the plastic pellets. And there he is, a pristine little Brasenose mirror, probably 12 or 13 pounds I'd guess this one. Loads of growing potential in these fish, they're going to get all massive one day, and he obviously liked that plastic pellet, so we're going to get him back and get the rod back out there. This is the range of the new plastic hook baits, or fake food as we're calling it. So to talk you through them, first of all, the yellow flavoured. It's very important to note that you've got two buoyancies in each of them. So we've got slow sinking, not completely sinking, but slow sinking. So when there's a hook attached, the hook will lay flat on the bottom and the bait will just be bending up above. And then a pop-up version, obviously, so you can keep the hook away from any muck on the bottom. This one is IB, that's illegal, and I'll let you work out the other one. That's Ali's #1 flavour. If he really needs to get a bite, an IB goes on. We've used it in our pop-ups for years, and now we've transferred it through into the corn. And you can see the different sizes. We've got the corn, obviously, to start off with, then the larger maize, then a small dumbbell, that's 8mm, and then a 12mm dumbbell, and there will be a 16mm dumbbell as well in all of the colours. So slow sinking, pop-up. And then moving on to the white one, again, slow sinking those ones, and those are pop-ups. And the flavour on these is banoffee, which is a combination of different flavours, making it... Oh, and I'm away. Well, how about that? Right in the middle of talking about the banoffee, and this is a banoffee on this left-hand rod. Just a single grain of the maize, slow sinking. I had a couple on this last night before I wound in to get some sleep. And this is a flavour that you've seen me using. Oh, he's properly going for it now. You've seen me using at Gigantica, caught some massive fish on this flavour combination, and just like all the other ones, we've transferred it into the plastic hook baits. So all those years of experience are contained within the range, and we didn't see any point in just doing loads of different colours and loads of different flavours, so we've kept it to a small range, all of which have got a proven track record, and we'll get loads of bites. And it's important to use different colours and different flavours, obviously, depending on where you're fishing, how clear the water is, how pressured the fish are, how much they've been hammered on particular colours. Oh, he's just doing me in some weed there. And on this particular session, I've had bites on yellow, white and pink. I've not tried the green yet. And I've also had bites on the fishy dumbbells. So he's getting fairly close in now. We'll get this one in and then show you the rest of the range. Come on, in you get. Got him. Another one falls to the magic of the banoffee. Well, that was a turn up for the books, getting a bite on the banoffee right while I was talking about it. So obviously that one floating and sinking in all the sizes. And then the next flavour down is an absolute classic, squid and fruit with a little bit of sweetener in it as well, in that bright pink colour. That's one of Damien's real favourites, that one, and it's caught loads of fish for us on this session. And then the next one is Citrus Zing. That's a combination of 3 different citrusy flavours and some sweetener as well. And then this little fella is what we're calling Fishy Fish, a real pungent fishy combination for fishing over pellets. And what we've done, put some trout pellets in the edge, seen what they've looked like after a couple of hours, and they're that sort of washed out colour. So that's going to blend in perfectly with them. Perfect for fishing over beds of pellets and in PVA bags as well. And that comes only in the pellet shape, not in the corn shape, and in the 2 sizes you can see here, and the bigger one as well. And then finally we've got unflavoured. So the yellow's going to come in slow sinking and pop-up unflavoured, so you can put your own flavours on them. And as you can see here, we've got extender stops to match all of them so that they pull up inside the bait. You can't see the hair on the end of the bait, and it looks as much like a natural free offering as possible. So that's the range. Let's have a look at the rigs to fish them on. Yes, another daytime bite on Brasenose 2, and yet another fish on the pink slow sinking maize. I swapped over to that because Jake had a couple of bites on it yesterday, put it on one rod. Admittedly, this is in the middle of the baited area, and it's gone twice in quick succession. And if I was really looking to build a hit, then I would probably swap another rod onto the pink to see if I can get 2 rods going.
I'm surprised, to be honest, the other rods haven't gone. I had a couple of fish last night on the white Banoffee maize, again slow sinking, and all our bites have come on the slow sinking rather than the pop-up. We're trying to keep everything as close to the lake bed as possible because the water is gin clear and we're fishing on a clean bottom, so a pop-up just stands out like a mile. If we were fishing over weed, then it would be longer hook links and a couple of grains on and fished as a pop-up just to keep that hook out of the weed. But the situation at the moment demands that we fish with slow sinking bottom baits. That fish is coming towards me now, pretty rapid. To the net. Got him! Another one on the plastic. Wicked. These are the slow sinking versions, perfect when there's no weed around, just on a nice clean bottom, whether it be sand or gravel, and all that's going to happen, the hook's going to lay flat on the bottom and the bait is going to lift just above. So you've got a little bit more buoyancy to make it go in their mouth easily, but you're not startling them. And this is particularly effective over a spotted area. If you've got loads of bait out there and your one's standing up above it all, it can get left. So we've got a size 8 wide gape there, fished on an IQ to Supernatural combi rig, the one that I really favour in clear water, with a piece of the pink on there. Then the next one down, we've got an IQ combi rig again, but we've actually got the bait sitting on a micro rig swivel. Again, the hook's going to lay flat and the bait's just going to hover above it. And then exactly the same setup as before, but rather than a combination of materials, this is the N-Trap Soft, and that one again on a size 6 curve, and then one of those dumbbells that's going to hover just above it, that's the Fishy Fish. And then on a nice stiff bit of material, if the bottom's really clean, then I would use a bit of hybrid stiff. It pushes everything away from the lead, and you can see it's set up exactly the same way. So we've got a bit of shrink tube kicking in on the eye of the hook to help the hook turn over and catch hold. And then we've got one of those IB dumbbells in 12mm on the end there, that's just going to hover above it. And then the last one, that's the one I had the bite on, that's the Banoffee maize, again with a size 6 curve, and this time it's the N-Trap semi-stiff, which again pushes everything a little bit further away from the lead and causes the bites more instantly. So if you're fishing over a clean bottom where there's no weed, it's like gravelly, or you've got some firm silt, then that's what I'd recommend. If you've got weed on the bottom, you need to be swapping over to a pop-up. So let's have a look at the rigs I'd use for that. This first rig is my absolute favourite pop-up rig. I've caught loads of fish on this, absolutely everywhere. It's a size 8 wide gape, tied with a semi-stiff end trap, and you can see there I've got a bit of shrink tube just to help the hook turn and catch hold. The rig ring is halfway down the hook, rather than being up by the bend as it would be with a slow sinker. It's down there so the hook sits over, cocks like a claw, and you see there's quite a small gap between the baits and the hook. And the baits themselves, the IB floating corn, is as buoyant as we can possibly make it for the size. And then the counterbalance is a small sinker with a little bit of putty moulded around that, and that'll just sink down nice and slowly and rest in the weed so the fish can get to it. And then the next one, we've got a bit of maize on there. This is the Green Zing one. Again, the hook's set up exactly the same way with the rig ring and everything, but this is a combi rig, so I've got IQ to Supernatural there, but it sits exactly the same on the bottom. And then the next one is a larger hook, a size 6 wide gape this time. 2 bits of corn wouldn't float that up off the bottom, so I've added a piece of foam underneath the piece of corn to give it a bit more buoyancy and hold that bigger hook up. So if you need a bigger hook because it's weedier or snaggier, that's what I recommend you do. And then finally, we've achieved the extra buoyancy using 2 bits of maize. It's larger, so it's obviously more buoyant than the corn, and that will still lift the size 6 wide gape up off the bottom there. And if I turn that over, you can see the extender stock disappears up inside the top of the bait, so you can't see the hair on the top of the bait. And the guys that I know that fish plastic all the time achieve that in a different way so that the fish can't differentiate between that one and any of the free offerings, and they believe it gets more bites, and who are we to argue? So that's using it with a pop-up. Let's have a look at how to tip off a boilie. Tipping off a boilie with a piece of plastic is an absolutely classic way to catch carp. It's probably caught hundreds of thousands of them all over the world. This is how I fish it. So first of all, we've got a piece of the Banoffee plastic corn. This is the pop-up stuff on top of a relatively small boilie, probably a 12mm boilie. And basically the boilie's going to lay on the bottom and the corn's just going to make it sit up just like that. So the hook's laying flat still. It's not too obvious, but it's enough to draw them in and get you more bites. And I've found by using a bit of white over a load of dark bait, you can get bites a lot quicker. And then moving up, this is obviously a larger hook, larger boilie. In this case, I'm using a piece of the plastic maize in the pop-up version. And basically this will sit again, so the hook is laying flat on the bottom, but the bait is just hovering above. And by tipping something off, you're basically getting two different types of attraction. You've got the plastic working for you and the boilie as well. And then finally, you can see one of the dumbbells there. Rather than being on lengthways, it's on sideways. You can see how the curve of the dumbbell fits perfectly on top of a boilie. Again, this is the pop-up version, so the hook's going to lay flat and that's just going to hover above it. So it gives a bit more buoyancy, which helps the hook go in better. You've got a couple of types of attraction, and if you've got crayfish and that sort of stuff about, even if the boilie gets eaten, you've still got the piece of plastic on there, which can get you a bite on its own. So that's the new range of plastic baits under the Fake Food banner from Calder. They're going to be released in stages, so you're going to get a couple of colours and flavours at each time, and the first ones will be hitting the shelves by the time you watch this DVD.
How about this stunning 25-pound Brasenose Mirror Carp? This one taken on a single piece of the pink slow sinking corn, proving once again just how devastating this range of plastic hook baits are. No matter how you use them, whether you're using them to tip off an awesome mainline boilie or just using them on their own, the flavours really are unique and are catching wherever we take them. Get on them, you won't be disappointed.
Feel like a good one, mate?
Yeah, it feels okay. It's trying to do me on the back of that bar at the moment. You saw that milky water
huge
kicked up.
Cloud, yeah.
It's certainly pulling well. Funny bite, it just a couple of little bleeps. I put the other rod down. I was just about to cast the other rod out, put the other rod down, looked at the rod and I thought, no, just a liner. I thought, well, that's encouraging. It's been quite quiet, that rod. And then it pulled up about a couple of inches. And then I was watching the slack line at the tip and it just slowly went, slowly.
So you fished this on a lead to come off?
Yeah, that's definitely, that's correct. Yeah,
so
no, I'm really...
fish safety and this amount of weed paramount, would you say?
Yeah, there's not loads and loads of weed, but why risk it, you know? It's much better for the fish. You increase your chances of landing a fish dramatically. Since I started fishing with drop-off leads, and a lot of the waters I fish are quite weedy. Since I've been fishing with drop-off leads, the number of fish you land to lost is greatly improved. And of course, a lost fish, particularly if it's got tackle in it, is going to get damaged. Much better for me, much better for the fish to get that hook out, isn't it?
Everyone's a winner,
yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good fish, that side.
Thanks for that, Adam. Yeah.
Lovely scaly one, look at that.
It is quite scaly. Let's just not talk about it too much.
Oh, he's really big as well, look at him.
Oh, shut up, Adam.
Saw a 30-pounder under that bush today.
Yeah, but you said it was all plain and no scales. This is definitely scaly.
Oh yes, I'll keep him coming, mate. All the way, all the way. He's yours. Hey, what a perler of a fish. Mate, that is the showstopper. Well done.
Oh, God,
awesome.
my arm. That was a good fight.
Right, guys, we've got the fish in the net. Now, carp care and how to handle fish is of paramount importance. We're going to show you exactly how to do that correctly next. Simon has got an absolute corker of a fish to show you. Wait till you see this is a real showstopper, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a proper St John's carp.
Now, one of the key things is keeping a fish in as pristine a nick as it was when it was caught. So we're going to take you through the procedure of getting the fish out of the water safely, transferring it to the mat and how to treat it accordingly. So first of all, Si, I mean, you're an experienced angler. I guess you would probably...
I think the sort of fish care side is hugely important to the anglers, and it starts from the moment that fish is in the net, really.
Absolutely.
And the first thing, this is a gravel pit, you've got gravelly slopes. a lot of anglers go, you know, wearing skate shoes, whatever, trainers,
Like me.
boots, chesties,
Yeah.
I think are essential. You
Yeah.
know, you don't want to be dragging this fish to there to lift it out. So come to the fish, don't drag
Absolutely.
it up over the gravel. Make sure it's you know, fully supported by the water. It's not listing over on that. You know, if it catches itself on these rocks, it'd be a
Absolutely,
disaster.
yeah.
So first thing is get out to the fish, and then what we need to do. Before we lift it out of the water is make sure it's folded flat in this net, and then what we're also going to do, something that you know you guys at Korda are really keen to get people doing, is to get this fish and the net into the sling and carry it to the unhooking mat. So make
Because
sure,
you and I, we're great believers of that damage to fish does happen or can happen when fish are lifted in net mesh.
yeah, absolutely. If this fish was sitting funny in the landing net and I lifted it clean out of the water now, if it was a peck, its peck could be broken by being bent round or
Yeah.
snapped. I've seen tails that have snapped straight off because
Right.
people haven't had the fish lying flat in the net. It's folded, so as they take the weight of the fish, it just breaks the tail. And also another thing that can easily happen is the rig gets caught in the material of the mesh. You go to lift it and the hook just rips straight out. Really important at this stage to make sure the fish is sat in the bottom of the net, it's nice and straight, the tail's not folded round and the fins are flat.
Just leading on from that, guys, as Simon said, critically important to keep the pressure on the mouth, or to make sure there's absolutely no pressure on the mouth. And one of the most common things that we see people doing is breaking down the net and rolling everything up together, and the line is rolled up with the net arms, which means it's tight all the way through to the rig. You lift the fish and it tears, and that's a common mistake, isn't
Yeah.
it, Si? So
Really important.
I mean, you're experienced enough to unhook the fish in the water occasionally. You're going to do that now, or do
We'll
you-
have a look. If I'm not happy that I can't easily get to the hook, I'd leave it in.
Okay.
Because I think if the fish is a bit lively and it's kicking in the net, you can end up with a size 6 in your finger. But if you can easily pop the hook out while it's in the net, then it's out the way.
Yeah,
And I
tackle
think
out the way is
just
good, isn't it?
last little point on that is, if you unhook this fish now and go, right, there's my rig, drop it in the water, the first swan that comes past is going to pick it up. So really important to make sure
Get
if
it
you
out
do
of the
unhook it and it's still got bait on, to get it up on one of the rings out the way so that you and the wildlife don't get hooked up.
Absolutely, good point. Well, shall I hold the net while you can try and pop
Oh.
the hook out?
Okay, let's have a little look. Let's come out easy.
Oh, brilliant, excellent. So rig out the way, I'll
Yeah.
hook that into the rod like you said. You got the net?
Yeah, fantastic. Cool.
There you go, mate.
Thank you.
Now Simon's just checking the fins are nice and flat against the fish's body. It's safely in the soft sling. There's no mesh that's under tension that could tear or do any damage at all. So if you can get down to the water, whenever you land a fish, good practice, get it out with the sling, not with the net mesh. Okay, the fish is onto a nice big fully padded mat. Let's have a look at what you caught, Simon. I know it's a bit special, this carp.
Sneaky preview in the landing net. Oh, look at those scales.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, I want one of those.
Proper.
Oh yes.
Cracking fish.
Again, always easy if
Massive
there's two
great.
of you guys. Look, huge great mouth, immaculate carp. If you want to lift him up, we'll get the mesh out of the way and drop him straight in the sling. Obviously not dropping. Sling's already zeroed, guys. That's good, you know. Just make sure you're well organised. We've got a weighing crook.
Well, Adam, you are the best judge of fish weights of any man I've ever met. What do
That's
you
a
reckon?
compliment. Oh, you're putting me on the spot now. I reckon he's about 22 and a half.
That'll do me.
What do you think?
That'll be fine. I'm happy with anything. As ever.
I'm better at judging them in the water than on the bank. You pressured me there. Right. Well, there you go. A bit bigger than we thought. I hadn't felt the weight of him. He's a lot bigger than I thought. 28 pounds on the nose. Simon, you're made up with that. Brilliant. Absolutely
Happy
excellent.
days. Fantastic.
Well, you can see we're both excited over this. A very special carp indeed.
So we're just going to have a look at its mouth. There was a little mark where my hook was in there, Adam, so I'm just going to put a little bit of the old carp care kit on there. And in here you've got the 2 bottles and the cotton buds. We've got the mouth and the body. Obviously we want the mouth, so we'll just click that out. We're just going to put a little bit on that mark where the hook was. But Very clean mouth anyway. That's
Excellent
fish.
And there's no, guys, if you've got a treatment like that, always look at the body. You know, if it's got a lifted scale or any kind of blemish, really, you can treat it with the body ointment and keep these carp as pristine as this. I mean,
it's a great looking fish.
You couldn't have a better example, could you, Simon?
That's a belt, isn't it? That's
Again,
good
another
old
key
bass,
thing while your fish is on the mat is to keep it nice and wet. You see some people holding the bottle right low over the fish. Fish kicks, hits the bottle, so give it a bit of space.
Yeah. And it's always worth putting your hand over its eyes as well, Adam.
Yes.
You know, it's one thing you see on the fish farm, the darker they are, the quieter they are. So.
Good tip, excellent.
I'm not a great fan of the old stick your thumb in the mouth, though. It's a bit old school.
Yeah. Well, let's hold him up and see what you've got there, mate. I'm very envious.
Oh, a cracker.
Well done. And that is how to safely handle a carp on the bank from netting it all the way through. We're going to return this fella after we've done a couple of still photographs.
Wake up, fella, come on. Come back to us, fella, come on. He's really not looking good, Al. Open your eyes, come on.
Do you know what's happened, mate? You're on your garage floor, your gear's been nicked, so you've had a heart attack, you're clearly dying.
Hey, do you know what, Al?
You should have got covered.
The swim I'm fishing in this session is actually quite weedy, and although I've been fishing to clear gravel margins with my left and middle rod, my right hand rod I've been fishing with PVA bags, solid bags. And what I want to do now is just run through quickly the rig that I use and the way I've been fishing those bags. So I've got some dark matter tubing, this is weedy green, and I've got about 18 inches of that on there, a tail rubber, and then I've got a flat inline pair. Now this is the significant bit. As I've mentioned already, I'm really keen on getting shot of that lead. So this is the drop-off system. So the way I'm setting it up is I've got a tail rubber on the end of my tungsten tubing. I push the tail of the flat inline pair into that tail rubber. Nice and wet first, slide it in there. And then I've got a size 11 ring swivel, which I put a cut down tail rubber on the end, and I push that neatly into the front end of that flat inline pair, and then I pull the line tight. And that forms an absolutely fantastic drop-off system. Get a fish on there, it pops out, and the lead drops off. Now it's really easy to fish that in a solid bag. So what I do now is just run through that setup. But before I do, I'll just show you the actual rig setup. I've got a link clip, a short length of Supernatural hook link. That is then tied to a trusty size 6 wide gape and a little bit of shrink tube on the eye just to kick it round. And then I've got a fish meal boilie, which is actually a critically balanced fish meal boilie, and I've trimmed that down, and that's what I'm going to fish inside my bag. So a really tidy little bag setup, and the beauty of it is you get a fish on, the lead's gone. So once again, you're playing a fish without the complication of having a lead hanging about. So I'm going to use a small solid bag. Here we go. So the first job is to get it opened up. I like to mix the pellets up that I'm going to fish in my bag. So I'll start off with some of these small sturgeon pellets, which are commercially available for the ornamental trade. You could use a little carp pellet or a little trout pellet, and then I'm going to add my hook link. Now obviously this bit can be a bit fiddly and it takes a bit of practice. I'm not a brilliant PDA bag fisherman myself, but I've got friends that can tie these up incredibly tidy and very quickly, but it's not that tricky, and once you practice it a little bit you can kind of get the hang of it. So the trick is to get that hook bait right down into one of the corners, and then you need the hook to be lying away from that. Now the setup I'm going to do effectively will end up with the lead in there, the hook link wrapped round like it's shown there, and the lead. Just then add a few pellets, and really you can add pretty much anything to this. I feel like I'm doing a cooking program now. I've put a few pellets in, but if you've got a particular pellet combination that you're really keen to use, I think it's important to mix the size of the pellets up. If fish are just picking up one size pellet, then possibly they become a little bit conditioned to that. The other thing with those little sturgeon pellets is they're a little bit different. I don't see many people using them. So by being a bit different, that might give you a little bit of an edge. And you can see that I'm slowly filling the bag up. I'm holding the lead and the tail rubber right at the top of the bag, and that's where I'm going to wrap it around as we fill. So a few more of the little sturgeon pellets in there. So it starts to get a bit filly when you're trying to get it in there. These little filling scoops that come with the solid bags make a big difference. They're really useful actually. Really help you to get the rig in there properly. Try and pack that pellet in nice and tight. And the beauty of having the small pellets in there is they leave very little air space. They pack in nice and tight. A few more pellets that side. And work them round that lead, so you're getting a nice tidy parcel. And you can sort of see it starting to take shape now. So hook baits down here, rigs snaking back and forth, top end of that lead, a little bit more pellet, and then we'll tie it off. In my experience, carp absolutely love trout pellets, salmon pellets, halibut pellets, and any of these could be used in this little setup. And the beauty of this is you could cast this into the thickest weed bed and still have a pretty good chance of hooking a fish. And mark my word, any carp worth its salt will find this when it's buried in the middle of a weed bed, because it'll give off a hell of a lot of smell. You can pull that neck of the bag nice and tight and then twist it round. And you can see you're forming the bag beautifully there, and the lead's right in the middle. Now what I tend to do at this stage, leave my fingers a bit of a wet. Not too much, otherwise obviously the bag starts to break down. Give it a nice turn and just hold that for a second. You can see that's a really solid bag, and you can imagine that bombing down into the weed. Now just to finish it off, a bit more moisture on that neck, to tighten it up nice and tight. If you're going for a big distance cast at this stage, you can start folding the corners around as well. I'm not going to. So there's my pretty much my finished bag. Now what I want to do for a little bit of extra security is I've got some quick melt solid PVA tape here. And what I'm going to do is pull a little bit of that off. And just for added security on the cast, really. Just wrap that round there a couple of times. Pull it tight. And knot the top of the bag. Not always necessary, but I tend to be a bit of a negative person when it comes to my PVA bag fishing, so I think it's quite good to get a little bit of extra security on there. Get rid of those ends. Seal it all off. Lovely job. How tidy is that? Now you imagine casting that into a thick weed bed. The bag's going to go punching in, find its way to the bottom very quickly. It'll then start to break down. You've got the tubing behind, the tungsten dark matter tubing behind it, so everything's nicely camouflaged. That'll land in amongst the weed or on the bed of the lake, start to break down. Now there's hundreds and hundreds of those little pellets in there, and maybe 100 of the bigger pellets in there. They're all breaking down, giving off loads of smell up into the water column, and carp will home in on that from a great distance away, so it's a very effective setup. You can see that a solid bag setup like that is an absolutely fantastic way of catching carp. I've got friends that will use these wherever they go and pretty much nothing else. So if you're in doubt, feeling a bit unconfident with a weedy area in front of you, try a solid bag. What I'd like to do now is run through the rods, reels and bobbin setup that I'm using this morning. On this right-hand rod, I'm fishing a choddy, and I'm fishing a relatively slack line. In that sort of choddy style. It's a naked choddy, and I've got the stow bobbin set with no extra weight, and the bobbin's quite sensitive. I've got the Delkim set on their sensitive setting, and you can see any little movement is giving me an indication. I've had a few fish this morning brush through the lines, and I'm getting a little trembling on there. So that's this right-hand rod. The middle rod, I'm fishing across to the far tree line. Now, at that sort of distance, maybe 80 or 90 yards, it's more important to fish with your lines a bit tighter, I reckon. So I've got the extra weight on the stow bobbin, and I'm fishing with that quite tight. And what I've had in the last couple of days, the bites on this rod, rather than being screamers, have actually the fish have come back towards me, and so I'm getting a drop on the bobbin. So I fish it fairly tight. If the fish pulls up, you get a good indication, but if it comes back towards you, it drops. And as I say, I've had a couple of bites I've had on this rod yesterday, they've been drop backs. On the left-hand rod, which is my banker at the moment, I'm fishing about 50 yards across to the margins over the far bank. I've got the stow bobbin set with no extra weight, and it's a sort of a hybrid between the two positions. It's neither at the top or right down. And what I'm finding on there, I've had some fish that are running away from me up the margin. They're pulling up tight, like that, and those other fish are coming back this way, and the bobbin drops. So I have that set midway. All three of the Delkims are set today, the wind down, so I've got them on sensitive settings. Particularly on this rod, I've got the stow bars, and they're great use on here because I'm fishing across to my left. If I get a really angry take, that rod's pulling about a bit, and these just give me the extra security that I know the rod's not going to bounce off the rest. So that's the stow bars. The rods and reels I'm using for this session are Daiwa Infinity 3 3/4 pound test curve rods. I bought these 3 or 4 years back for a spot I was fishing where I was casting quite a long way. I'm no big caster, as you guys will all know, but I reckon the fish were about 130 yards out, so I bought these rods on the recommendation from the guys at Corda, and I loved them. And now I'm using them for just about all of my fishing. They're so versatile. A couple of weeks ago, I was stalking in the blue pool. I was using these, never had a hook pull, 15 or so fish out. I've been using them here. You can cast bags, you can cast choddies, so brilliant rods from that respect. You can cast anything you put on the end. The other thing I really like about them, in this sort of weedy water, you've got a little bit extra pressure on the fish. You wind down on a 2 3/4 pound test curve rod on a weeded fish, and you put a massive bend in your rod and you're likely to break it. And if you're trying to cast with a 2 3/4 ounce rod and you've got a big bag, you're also putting too much strain on the rod. So these rods are perfect for that. The reels, These are Daiwa Entos, and I've loaded them up with the 20-pound subline. Setup I've got now 100% confidence in, so well worth giving this stuff a go.
Well, now that is a bruiser of a male mirror carp. Absolutely beat me up. Huge pecs, massive tail, epic scrap, about 20 minutes, most of it on the surface. Yeah, just absolutely blown away with this. I'm going to show you next how I've got my rods set up and why I've got them set up that way for this style of fishing. Now you'll notice straight away that my rod tips are really high. And what I've got is a candy floss blanket type weed bed running out 30 yards probably, and in places it comes to within a couple of feet of the surface, especially in close. Now, it'd be absolutely pointless using a back lead or getting my tips down or trying to get the line really low running through the weed, because it would just clog up on the bite, it would be in the tip ring, it would just be a disaster. So to combat that, what I've decided to do is put my tips right up nice and high. When I've made the cast, I sink the line. As I said, I'm using 20-pound subline, sinks quite quickly, the V's meet. As soon as it's under the surface, I will keep paying out line before I put the indicator on. That's very important. Never be in a rush to get your indicator on. I want that line nice and slack, draped over the top of the weed. Now that's important for two reasons. One, obviously I don't want to spook the fish that are coming through, but also when I hook a fish, I don't want to be wiping out my lines, because I can't back lead or get my lines down any lower than where the actual weed is. So when I've hooked a fish, I've not had any lines wiped out, even the lines that are held high in the water by the weed. So I think that's testament to the fact that they're as low as they can be against the weed. When a fish hooks itself, it's rising in the water and it's hitting this high rod tip. Now that compression helps to set the hook, which alleviates hook pulls, but it's also one of the reasons I do it. A lot of people ask why I fish like this sometimes. I like to have my tips up high simply because it's exciting. You know, you get a bite like that, it really is, it's very exciting, and that's what carp fishing is supposed to be. Now, when the fish hits that tip, the line's obviously tight, coming through down to the bite alarm. It's not going to be able to take much line straight away, because when you're fishing in weed, guys, you've got to have a tight clutch. If you're in your bivvy 10 yards back, if the fish is going and it's taking 10, 15, 20 yards of line, sometimes you probably all heard it yourselves, you hear that bite alarm going in the middle of the night and it's on. If you're not on that rod